bringing you the best music from home studios across the world. This is TAETRO Radio.
What's going on, everybody? This is TAETRO, and welcome to the inaugural first episode of the TAETRO Radio podcast. Every week on the TAETRO Radio podcast, we are going to showcase 4 home studio producers from around the world. The producers featured on this show are all part of the TAETRO Community group on Facebook. Right now, the community group is closed, but anybody can receive an invite by messaging me, TAETRO, at facebook.com/TAETROmusic. The TAETRO Community group was established so that home producers from around the world could have a collective and a place to seek guidance from fellow home producers. Once you get your invite for this group and you join, you will find the instructions to submit your music to TAETRO Radio. 4 home studio producers are selected per week, and we're going to kick things off right now with a producer called NOCCT, who's 15 and from the US. This track is called Derealization.
You're listening to TAETRO Radio.
One thing I really like right off the bat in this track is having an ambient field recording at the beginning. It really adds a human feel. When we're working in electronic music, a lot of the times, it's electronic, but adding a field recording makes it that much more human and brings it into the real world. NOCCT does give a bit of a description for his track. He says the track actually started out with a kick drum that I had cut the higher frequencies out of and compressed. It made the kick sound distant and isolated, yet still impactful. I highly agree, and this just shows that you can start a track from anywhere. So basically starting from that kick drum brought us this nice ambient flowing track, and I think it's really beautiful. NOCCT talks a little about the creative process, saying, generally when I make tracks I don't have a fully fleshed out idea. I often mess around until I have a sound that I enjoy, and then I work out from there. I think a lot of us home producers work that way, and I think it's a really fun way because it adds an element of improvisation and performance into the production world. Versus when you're a traditional songwriter, you generally write the whole song, then you go in the studio and record it front to back. When you're creating electronic music, you're sitting there, you're performing over loops, and it's just a bit more of a lively feel. And it definitely comes through in this track. One thing I would definitely add, after the laugh sample, which is sort of like the pinnacle of your track, you've got new melodic material with the slow attack, glassy type synth. I would add one more element, a new sound, a melodic sound, something that sticks out in the mix a little bit more. Something that's a little less sine wave sounding and a little more saw. Not too much to bring it out, but something to just add once we hit the pinnacle of the track that makes me feel like, okay, we've arrived, we've gone somewhere from the beginning. You could even double the melody that's on the main lead on a different sound to bring us something new, but still remain in the same melodic content. Another change that I would add is I would actually bring that ambient field recording in earlier towards the end of the track. And I love the idea of starting and finishing the same way. I think that's great. But I think you could ease it in a little bit more and maybe even side chain it to your kick. So if you side chain that ambience to the kick and it's ducking under and it has almost a rhythmic function, it will add a little bit more of a blend between the real world and the electronic world. And I think that's kind of what you're going for here. Overall, this is a fantastic track, and I think you should really be proud, NOCCT. Great work. The next track we're going to feature is from a producer called Farshout. You might know him as Francesco. He's our only mod over on the TAETRO Community Facebook group. He's 22, from Italy, and this track is called Sampled. Let's check it out. Francesco says, I made this track using only free one-shot samples from the internet. And this is just a lesson to everybody out there that it doesn't matter what version of Live you have, what your sample library is like, you can find so much out there for free that there's no excuse. You can make awesome music with stuff that's just free out there on the internet. People ask me all the time, do I need this to make great music? Do I need that to make great music? You need very little to create good music these days, and a lot of it is just out there waiting for you to find. You just gotta look for it. And Francesco says that. He says, I had a good time making it, experiencing that you don't need fancy, expensive plugins to achieve something in the music production world. I mean, you listen to this track and it could be featured on an MTV show or a commercial for sure. Let's dive into the structure a little bit. You want to be sure not to overexert your listener too soon, right? So this track has a nice intro, it very much builds up, and then boom, we're in, and you're like, wow, a lot of high energy, feels really good. And then it kind of goes for a while. I would dial that back a bit. I would only do the big hype section for maybe like 8, 16 bars, one section, and then go down to that little verse type section. The section of the song that comes in at a minute 29 could definitely have come in earlier. Music is all about tension and release, right? So we want to make sure we don't give it all the way too soon, because we've given so much at that beginning section that by the time we get to the end, it's pretty much stuff that we've heard before, where you want to build your listener up to that. So I would actually take 2/3 of what happened earlier in the song and put it towards the end. You can use the example of an action movie, right? Everybody who goes to see an action movie goes to see it for people kicking butt. They don't go to see it to see people talk. But you'll notice when the movie starts, you're gonna get this big, awesome scene. Lots of explosions, lots of cool fighting. And then it's gonna die right down. Happens almost in every action movie. Big action and then bring it down, set the stage. So that's what you wanna do. You wanna hit them with some big action right away, which you do in a great way. But then don't go too long or the viewer's just gonna get exhausted. But overall, this track is really great. Like I said, great example of how to use free samples. And also just a great high energy vibe. Great work, Francesco. We've got another great example of using free things that you can find on the internet from producer Mitchell. Mitchell's 21 years old from Portugal, and he used a free synth with FL Studio called Synth 1, and also drum samples from a free sample pack from Lego Welt's website. This track is called Highway. Let's check it out.
This is TAETRO Radio.
This track gives off a great 80s Los Angeles type vibe for sure. I'm reminded of the movie Drive. Mitchell writes, I made it about 2 months ago in a single day. I usually take a lot longer, but I got in that special zone with this one and I managed to pump it out really quick. I think it was because I was 100% focused on it. I had no internet connection during that time. I think we can all relate to this when we're in our home studio. There's distractions everywhere. You can always check email, you can always check Facebook, and sometimes that all gets in the way. So unplugging actually helps a lot sometimes. There's actually some apps that you can use that will shut down your home internet from a certain time. So you set the app, you say every day from 5 to 7, I'd like the internet to be off. And then, you sit down from 5 to 7, you got no internet, so what are you gonna do? You're probably gonna make some awesome music like this. We can also probably all relate to sitting down and feeling like you're in the zone. And then the opposite of that, sometimes you sit down and you can't get anything out. So it's really important to capitalize when you think you're feeling a way that's gonna get you to produce a lot of music at once. Mitchell also writes, it probably sounds a bit rough in terms of mastering and mixing because I didn't know much about that at the time. Still don't know much. I'll tell you, the mixing sounds fine to me, and I don't think that anything sounds rough. I think the track is a little quiet, but that's okay. I don't necessarily subscribe to the loudness war. You do want your tracks to be the same volume as most people's, but it shouldn't be your priority, especially when you're just starting out. There's some great use of the bit crusher, and I love how you use it almost like dialing it in. I use it in a very similar way. The backbeat can get very samey throughout the track, and that's okay. It's a nice steady track that's grooving right through. But what you should do is at least pick up the drums in some parts, especially in the build section. At around 3 minutes 10 seconds, the snare actually goes from being just on 2 and 4 to being on every beat, and I would have loved to see that in a more traditional build pattern where it just keeps doubling itself, right? So it goes from being on 2 and 4, then it's on 1, 2, 3, and 4, then it's on 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and so on. So you go quarter, eighth, 16ths, 32s. Very, very popular technique, obviously, in EDM and all types of electronic music. And sometimes, cliche is okay. I like to avoid cliche sometimes, but that sort of rhythmic build really helps create tension and release in your tracks. And there is such emphasis on the backbeat, the 1, 2, 3, 4. If it were my track, I might add in an open hi-hat on the ands. 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that, to kind of make things pick up towards the end. Overall, great track, Mitchell. Like I said, awesome 80s LA vibe, I'm seeing a nighttime LA scene with palm trees, almost like a film score type thing. Really great work. The next track we're going to feature is from community member Mark, who is part of a trio known as the Punjabitea.house. They're based out of San Francisco, and this track is called Kuiper Belt. Let's check it out.
bringing you music from home studios across the world. This is TAETRO Radio.
With a track called Kuiper Belt, a lot of times you expect a space track to be spacey, floaty, ambient, that sort of thing. But this track is really driving and pushing forward, and that's what space exploration, what something traveling through space is all about, right? That's what objects in the Kuiper Belt are doing. So I think it's great that this kind of breaks the mold of a track that's based around the title of a space subject is driving, not just floaty. While you're listening to this track, you're probably thinking, wow, this really sounds like it would be awesome in a live setting, and that's because the Punjabitea.house actually records as a trio, and they record their stuff live. And I think that really shows through the track. I can imagine like being in a room, playing all together, and Mark, hopefully you can share with us when you're going to be playing live in the San Francisco area. I'm obviously not over there, but anybody in the community who is in the San Fran area should definitely go check these guys out for sure. It can always be a challenge trying to capture live sets like this, and Mark points that out. He says the music is, for the most part, as we played it. To mix it for release, I do apply some judicious editing and standard mastering tools, EQ and compression, sometimes more than others. This track was a section that I really liked, but was really hard to mix. It took months to get the mix and sound to a point where we'd release it. And I definitely feel your pain as somebody who does a lot of live performances like you see in my videos and then needs to convert that into an audio recording, right? Because some things work well live and sound great while you're performing them, and then you go back and listen to it and you're like, well, this needs to be cleaned up a bit. One instance where this happens all the time is where, things are sweeping. So they're running through the EQ spectrum and sweeping through. Some of your more like spacey, floaty sounds are doing that, and as they cut across the mid, they kind of just like cut right through everything, and that can be so hard to do in a live mix, but I do admire the way you did it. My advice, I guess, would just be put a master EQ on some of those that are just cutting through a little too much and notch out the mid frequencies, because those are kind of what distorts and makes it sound a bit off sometimes. I did compliment the driving nature of the track, but I think at some point, maybe 3/4 of the way through, the drums should cut out somewhere and build back in, right? Because I see where this works in a live setting where everybody's grooving and going straight through, but sitting here listening to it, I'm like, okay, I want to break, I want to sit, notice some other sounds that are happening around me, and then build me back into it. That might even work well in a live setting too, building everybody back up. But you don't really want the dancing to stop, so I could definitely see why you kept that groove going. Great track, Mark, and the only thing I would like to see is I would love to see a video of you guys performing live, so maybe we'll feature that over on the Facebook community page. Definitely get in touch about that. Great work. If you're interested in hearing more from the Punjabitea.house or any of the artists you heard today, the links are in the description below. If you go check out an artist, be sure to leave a comment on their pages and let them know you came from TAETRO Radio. Every week I'd like to feature 4 independent home producers on this show, so if you would like to submit your music, make sure you're part of the TAETRO Community Facebook group by sending facebook.com/TAETROmusic a message, and you will get an invite and then receive instructions on how to submit your music. Special thanks to NOCCT, Francesco, Mitch, and Mark for submitting music this week, and also a huge shout out to Jerry, community member who lent his voice of God to this show. If you see Jerry over in the community, be sure to compliment his radio voice skills. Anyway, this has been TAETRO. Thank you for listening and have a good one.
Homegrown music from the TAETRO community exclusively on TAETRO Radio.